Okay, well, welcome back, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. To my 4 or 5 viewers, I know it's been a long week. You haven't heard me. You've probably been on the edges of your seat, and you're just waiting for this podcast to drop. So I apologize. I'm doing my best to get it out. So this week, I wanted to talk about simplifying complexity. Now, I was trying to think of things to talk about and to just discuss, and the thing that kept coming back to my mind was what I was doing at school. And I'll explain a little bit further what was going on there. But to start out, I wanted to start with the quote of the week. And this week I have 3, and I really like them. So the first one is from Albert Einstein, and it says, "Most of the fundamental ideas of science are essentially simple and may, as a rule, be expressed in a language comprehensible to everyone." The second one is from Edward Teller, and it says, "The main purpose of science is simplicity, and as we understand more things, everything becomes simpler." And the last one, which I really liked, which it says, "The hardest thing to see is what is in front of your eyes." Now, just think and ponder about that for a second. I think that kind of is relatable to everybody. I feel like everybody kind of struggles sometimes with seeing the simple things that are in front of them and appreciating them, because sometimes they look a little too simple and we just look right over them. So to start out, I wanted to talk about something that I learned this week, and it's called the complexity bias. Now, the complexity bias, it is our just people's tendency to value complex solutions over simple ones. Now, if you think about it, think about when you're setting goals. Now, when you set goals, there's usually 2 routes that people go. They either make really, really complex goals or they make really simple goals. And the people who make complex goals, they typically fail to achieve their goals because it's just too much. There's too much on their plate. They can't really get to everything that they want to do, and something comes up in the day and it throws them off, and because they don't have the habit, it falls apart. And the simple goals, what ends up happening a lot of times is you set 1 or 2 goals, and they're pretty simple, easy goals. They could be going outside on a walk for 30 minutes a day and reading for 30 minutes a day. But the problem is that because they're so simple, we doubt. And doubt creeps in, and we just start thinking, am I not doing enough? I see all these other people out here, and they just seem to have their stuff together, and they're working so hard, and they have all of these goals, and we get overwhelmed. And so we end up just not even having any goals. And so it's kind of sad, you know. And if you look at another example of how people tend to not trust simple solutions, a really good one is investing. So in investing, the S&P 500 is known to be one of the most consistent standards of investing that there is, and it gets approximately 10% a year, and it's done that for over about 100 years. So every year, on average, you're going to make 10% if you put it in. But it seems too simple. People just, they don't like that. They want something more complex, and they think that they can beat it because it seems so simple. So people day trade. I looked it up, and the average return on investment for day traders is negative 4.5%. So not only are they missing out on the 10%, but they're also losing money. And so in essence, you're losing out on 15%, which if you compound 15% over 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, it's a big chunk of change. And it even applies to more things than just money. It applies to skills and habits and who you are as a person. So that was something that I thought was really cool. Now, the reason I got into thinking about simplifying complexities, it had to do with my thesis. Now, to a lot of my viewers, in fact, probably all of them, it's kind of a hard thing to explain because it has to do with engineering. And so to understand a lot of things, you have to have a vocabulary to back it up. Now, in my thesis, what I'm doing is, in really simple terms, I'm predicting the pressure from material inside of a silo, how much pressure it's pushing on the wall. Now, it might seem like that should already have been solved, and it has. There have been a lot of different people who have developed equations, developed methods to solve for different things, and that's cool. It's really good, and a lot of people have their own predictions. I'm doing just another branch off of that. Now, with my thesis, I'm taking a method that was applied for a linear wall. So instead of a silo, it was applied to a linear wall, and then I'm taking that little equation and I'm modifying it and applying it to a wedge of a silo. So it's kind of a pie shape. And to do that, I have to, and I don't want to make this too boring, so I apologize if you're already zoned out, but to do that, I have to find the weight of the silo, which means I need the volume and I need areas. And the problem is that the problem becomes really complex really fast because almost every parameter changes. The slope of the material, depending on which material you're using, the radius of the silo, where it's hitting the silo wall, where the failure slope. So depending on how much material you put in the silo, where it fails, the failure angle is going to be different. And I know I already lost a lot of you guys. I'm sorry. But anyways, so with this and finding this volume, finding this weight, there's a lot of different ways that people have come up with to solve complex problems. They will solve integrals, if you know what that is. They will do linear algebra. They'll do a whole bunch of different methods, and they're really complex, and you need to know a lot to be able to understand how to use them. Now, in my case, I was kind of in between because I understand some of these methods, and I'm not the smartest guru out there, and I don't understand everything, but I do understand some basics pretty well. And the reason all of this came about and the whole simplifying complexity came about was I've been working for literally almost 2 months on calculating this problem. It gets so big that the numbers and variables don't even fit on the page. And it got to the point where it felt like I was just solving a spaghetti mess, right? I have all of these different equations and they're all intertwining because there's just so many different variables. So I have, the area, there's area 1, 2, 3, centroid 1, 2, 3, the volume, the unit weight, the dividing that into just a little wedge piece, and then multiplying that to get the weight, and then you get the weight, then you can solve for the pressure. So it's a lot. Anyways, so as I was solving this, I was super overwhelmed. I'd never done this. I had no one to look to figure it out except for my dad and this guy that works with my dad. There's literally nobody else that does this. And as I'm going through and I'm solving these things, nobody's ever done it before. So I can't go online and I can't search for the answer. And that's kind of intimidating at first and then overwhelming when you get into it, because most of the time somebody's done what you're going to do. It's really hard to do something that nobody else has ever really done. And as I was getting into it and I'm solving it, I felt like I was never going to do it. and I felt like I was super overwhelmed, and I just had too much on my plate. There's too much of a spaghetti mess. And anyways, as I was looking at it, I just started breaking it down. I looked at it from every position that I could, and then I broke it down. And I took the wedge and I broke it up into the most basic shapes that you can: a square and a triangle, or a rectangle and a triangle. And to find the volume or the area of a rectangle, it's super easy: side times side. To find it of a triangle, it's just half of a rectangle, right? So 1/2 times base times height. Now, when I did that, I incorporated all of those things. So really simple methods to find those things, and it ended up creating kind of a beautiful solution where once it all came together, all of my charts and graphs just turned into art, and it was really cool. And as I thought about it more, it just made me realize that almost everything in life, literally everything, that is complex can be broken down into simple things. Now, there are two steps that the two first things that you need to do when you're confronting a complex problem, right? And this is probably the part where everybody actually wants to get into to listen to. So the two things that you can do when you're getting into problems is, the first deals with perspective. So you either get in close or get out. So get far away and view it from somewhere else. You need to change the way that you're looking at something to be able to understand a different solution. We tend to think of things as kind of one-dimensional, as if it's a line. And so the only way to look at it is if it's a line, and there's no other way to solve it. But when it comes down to it, there is a lot of different ways to solve most complex problems, and a lot of different ways to explain it. The people who know how to solve complex problems usually know the basics better than anybody else. And so that's why we tend to ask people for advice, right? So there's two reasons usually you ask people for advice. It's they either have been confronted with this problem, they know how to solve it, or you want a different perspective. So it's really, really important. The first thing you do is you change your perspective, either get in or get out, and look for patterns, look for things that are developing. The second thing that you can do is to break it down, make it simple. Take something that seems so complex to you and make it into triangles and squares, right? Make it into something that you understand. And that's how a lot of these really, really famous people have done amazing things. Elon Musk, he once said that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, which is true. If you show something like an iPad or a light to somebody from the 1500s, they would literally look at you like you had a magic wand, right? They don't understand it, and it's because they don't understand the basic steps of how it is. Now, it's funny because even now, we don't really truly understand a lot of these mechanisms, right? I don't know exactly how lights work. I don't know exactly how iPads work. I know some things about them just because I've had to study some, just electrical engineering, physics, all that kind of stuff. But when it comes down to it, we don't really know all of the different things. And it's a really, really complex problem that people have spent a lot of time on. But people have broken it down to the point where it's learnable. And it's learnable because it's simple. So there's a lot of ways that we are able to apply this in our own life, right? So if you think about it, one of the biggest things that is plaguing our generation is anxiety, right? Think about how many people are dealing with anxiety and how many people have such a tough time combating it. one of the best ways to break down anxiety, and I'm not saying that this is the only solution, but a lot of anxiety is caused by being overwhelmed and being in a situation where things just look too complex, and so we don't know how to solve it. When we're able to look at the problem and break it down to really, really simple pieces, then we're able to solve things a lot easier, a lot quicker. It's the same thing. You eat an elephant one bite at a time, and that's true. If you ever look at people's, if you ever look at some really smart people's Excel spreadsheets, when you take a look at it first glance, it just looks like numbers on a page, everything's everywhere, and it looks like it's the most complex thing ever. And the way that they wrote it was one line at a time. And once they write that one line at a time, it compounds and they're able to make things a lot faster. People, I think of computers, iPads, a lot of our technology today in a way that it just seems like a complexity that they would never understand, and they probably won't, which is fine. But what they're looking at is it's almost like magic, right? You tap on the screen and everything works the way you want it to. But when it comes down to it, you can break these things down until they are understandable, where everything that's going into the computer is pretty much, you can break it all the way down to where it's ones and zeros, binary. And if you don't know what that means, then you can probably look it up. But essentially, they break it down until everything is as simple as can be. And that's how they build these things. They built them from the ground up that way. So there are a couple cool cool stories about that I'll get to in just a second. But one way to kind of apply these things in a real world scenario was I learned this story from a coworker. He told me that one day he was working on an airport runway, and as he was working on the airport runway, he was managing the job, and they were over budget. They were inefficient, and he was the manager and he was the team, and his boss was coming down kind of hard on him because he was saying, "Hey, what the heck is going on?" And my coworker, he is not a slacker at all. He was riding on everybody's butt. He was working super hard by himself, and he was just pushing, trying super hard to get everything done. And his boss came in one day, and when he came in, he said, "Here, come take a drive with me." And so he gets in the car and he drives him to the top of the hill. And as he drives him to the top of the hill, he isn't saying much, but they get to the top of the hill, and my coworker, he said, "Well, what are we doing?" And his boss said, "Just watch." And they look down and they see the runway with all of the workers down there. And as they look down at the runway with all the workers there, they see patterns, right? They see a guy in a backhoe just driving, sitting for 10 minutes, driving, sitting for 10 minutes, driving, sitting for 10 minutes, and wasting time in between every single time he was going back and forth. Then he looked over and he saw one group, they finished their work and they sat there for an hour while he was waiting and watching them. And then he looked over and he saw other guys that were working their heads off, but the problem was that they were just doing it completely inefficient. They were driving all the way around when they could have just cut straight through. And he said that at first, when he looked down at the problem from a different angle, he didn't see anything. He was just looking at the problem, and he saw the same problem that they had before. It was that they were over budget, they were inefficient, and they needed to get to work. And so he told his boss, he said, "Hey, I got to get to work, man. Like, I got to get down there so that we can get this thing done." And his boss just said, "Hold on, let's sit here for a minute and let's just be patient and look down." And as he looked down, he started to notice all these patterns, and he broke down a plan in his head of how he was going to address each situation, how he was going to talk to the guy who was driving the backhoe back and forth, how he was going to talk to the crew, and how he was going to help these other guys work so that they could get their work done fast. That is a really good example of those two principles. Changing your perspective, getting back really far or getting in really close, right? He got back far. And when he looked at his situation, he realized the things that he could change. And then he broke it down. He broke it down into little bite-sized chunks. Other people that have done this in our world, that have made amazing discoveries and done amazing things, we all know about them, but some of them are Elon Musk with SpaceX, Tesla, Starlink. Every single one of those he simplified them. He made a complex thing that was so complex really simple. It cost NASA somewhere around $5 to $10 billion to launch off a rocket into space, and he figured out a way how to do it for $500 million by reusing the rockets, right? Steve Jobs, he took a computer that had so many buttons, so many ports, so many things going on, and he simplified it into something that everybody loved. There's so many more examples. Some of the most popular things that we love in our lives are complex ideas and things that people have broken down into simple concepts. IKEA, you could go on and on. One of the best examples, though, is Henry Ford. So Henry Ford, which most people know his story, he took cars, which used to be, before his time, individually handcraft. They were literally built one by one by super specialized people who knew how to make cars. Now, he went in and realized, okay, I don't need someone who's super specialized. I need someone who can do one job. And I need parts that can be used over and over again. And made the assembly line and made it so that cars were cheaper, they could make them faster, and that more people had access to them. He made things simple. He made complex things simple. So to finish up, I just wanted to encourage you guys that whenever you have something in your life that seems like a really, really complex problem, just follow the 2 steps. Either get in or get out, and take a step back and change your perspective. And the second is to break things down. Make it into bite-sized chunks that you can handle. Then write it out. Make a list and just read it through. That's what I do. I have to break everything down because I can't store it all up here. It gets too jumbled up. But anyways, thank you guys for listening. It's so good to have you. I will try to start doing these things every week because I want to get better at this. I know I make a ton of mistakes, and I'm really trying to improve myself and to make things that you guys will enjoy. If you have any recommendations, leave it down in the comments. If you have anything that you wanted to add, just leave it down there. I love you guys, and I'm really grateful for everything you guys contribute to my life. So hopefully, if you want to see anything, you want to hear about any topics or anything either, you can just let me know. So thanks so much. We'll see you next week.